Hi, Dr. Tara. I'm so excited you're here.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, I'm really pumped to take a deep dive into this conversation around young ladies' experiences during puberty. And talking about this in a way that also will empower parents, specifically moms, right? Because a lot of times it's the female caregiver who's supporting their child through this, empowering them with information to help them engage with their blossoming young lady in a way that really is going to create a foundation of more like confidence in them versus shame.
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited for us to also talk about the intersection of like social media and conversations with their girlfriends because I have an 11-year-old
Hmm.
and some of the stuff that she comes home, she doesn't even have social media or a phone yet. But the stuff she tells me that her girlfriends are talking to her about is wild because it's stuff that I didn't get exposed to until like mid to late high school. Yes. And so I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too. Me too.
So before we dive into that piece, just tell us a little bit about like what led you to being so passionate about this particular topic because it is very specific, right?
It is very specific. Yes. So, okay, we'll go back in time. So, when I was pursuing my doctorate degree, I co founded a company called All About Mental Empowerment. And
Ooh.
we go into schools and we do talks about mental health. So, we've worked with over 100 schools in the greater Toronto area. I was still in school at the time. So, I was loving doing these workshops and I was still trying to figure out exactly where I was most passionate about health. And I started to notice that as we did these workshops, and back in the day, there was one workshop that we did where in the middle of it, we would have all the kids stand up and we would do like a little dance break. And it was really interesting because I noticed that from kindergarten to around grade 3-ish, the kids right away, they would stand up, they'd start dancing, no shame, nothing. But as soon, and especially girls, as soon as they would get to around grade 4, grade 5, like close to that middle school age, right when puberty was actually starting, they would stand up, but they would look around at their peers and they would like you could almost see it. They'd be like, is this cool? Is this okay? Is this what we're doing? And it was such an eye-opening moment for me. I really realized, okay, that's a critical time when girls are
Yeah.
starting to develop confidence, when they're really taking a lot of cues from their peers. And then I just got really passionate about this specific age and developmentally what was going on. And then that just really blossomed. And I created a mom and tween daughter puberty education program. I now do a ton of education all about puberty and I absolutely love it. It just lights me up. It's such an important time in a girl's life. And it's
Is.
also such a critical time between the mom and the daughter or the parent and the daughter to build
Yes.
a really solid relationship. So I've just become incredibly passionate about it.
I'm so excited you're doing this. It's such a need in the world, and the content that you share is incredible.
Thank you.
Um, okay, tell us, let's first talk about what young ladies experience when they're going through puberty, especially in today's day and age, but just in general, the process of puberty
Mhm.
and developing. Can you educate us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what a lot of parents don't realize is that there's actually 5 stages of puberty. I think so often when we think about girls going through puberty, we just think about getting her first period, right? That's kind of the focal point for female puberty. But that actually happens in stage 4 of puberty, 4 of 5. So, there's actually a lot that happens before her first period. So, what we know is that even as soon as stage 1, which often starts around 8 years old, that's when mood changes really begin for girls. There's big changes in their brain happening, there's hormonal changes. And so, I really encourage parents to let's work all the way backwards to stage 1 or even stage 2. Stage 2 is when we first start to see the physical changes. So, breast buds are often the first physical change of puberty. But there's so much that we can do to support girls well before her first period, right? Let's start talking about mood changes. Let's help her identify her emotions, her thoughts, come up with really solid coping strategies, because all of that is going to be so helpful as she progresses through puberty. Those are real life skills, right? And so much of that changes during puberty. There's such an opportunity to dive into all of those, especially those invisible pieces, because often that's harder for us to talk about, the mental health side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. When she turned around about 8, she was having these massive shifts in mood, and I was like, okay. And there's other surrounding. I'm divorced, right? So she has visitation with her dad, and so I'm like, is that? I'm like, no. I mean, we've been doing that for a long time, and so I decided to Google it.
Yeah, as we
and
do.
and they taught they there's they speak about it a little bit, this term of, like, I can't remember exactly how they phrased it, but it's like these hormone surges. It's like pre-puberty
Mhm.
mood shifts and hormone surges, and I was so glad that there was some sort of information about that. And they're like, yeah, it's really common when your daughter is like 8, 9 years old. And that really helped me to help her understand, because she's pretty aware, because I'm a retired therapist. We have a lot of
Yeah.
language talk that not every family has. And
Mhm.
so she's like, I'm feeling weird, and I feel like I can't control myself, and I don't know why I feel like that. And so then I was able to share that with her, and just more to help her co-regulate,
Yeah.
right? And through co-regulating with her, now she is more and more learning how to self-regulate.
Yes.
And so that was really cool. That was a very powerful thing for me. And also looking back, I'm like, oh, wow, maybe that's some of what I was going through. And my
Mhm.
mom had no clue.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, when parents don't have a clue, it's so easy to say, stop being so emotional, or why are you
Yeah.
acting like this? Right. And that creates so much disconnection in that moment,
Yes.
because it's just like you said, like these girls are like, what's going on with me? Like
Totally.
they are confused too, just like we are, about how their moods and hormones are shifting. And so it's such an important moment of connection. Even just saying, oh, that's actually normal. That's part of puberty. That's part of growing up.
Mhm.
Let's talk about
Mhm.
that. Like that creates so much trust in the relationship. It's so important.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it has set the framework for these other stages where she's having a lot of feelings and thoughts, and even criticisms at times about what her body has been looking like in transition.
Yep.
And she feels safe to voice those things.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So what's phase two?
Love it. Stage 2 of puberty, that's when the physical changes begin. Stage
Mhm.
1 is very much invisible. It's
Yeah.
really just the mood changes that we start to see. And then when we get into stage 2, so for 85% of girls, the first physical sign of puberty is the development of breast buds. And then
Mhm.
for the other 15% of girls, it's pubic hair. So
Mhm.
those are the changes, the big physical changes that happen in stage 2 of puberty. And we still see those mood changes as well. Another
Mhm.
thing that we see around stage 2 is that a girl's circadian rhythm starts to shift. And I see this, I also have a private practice, and I see this a lot with my patients, where girls now all of a sudden they're like, I'm not hungry in the morning. I don't want to eat breakfast. I'm just not hungry. Or I'm not
Mhm.
tired at 9 p.m. anymore. And that is all developmentally normal. Their
Mhm.
sleeping and wake cycles really shift, and appetite shifts along with that. So I think that's also something that parents really don't realize, but it's an important piece of the puzzle. And that,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't think that that was related to puberty.
mhm.
Very interesting.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Super interesting. And then in stage 3, so the breast changes and the pubic hair, those continue to change and evolve for all of the stages of puberty after starting in stage 2. And then in
Mhm.
stage 3, one of the big changes that we see is vaginal discharge. And this is something that I feel like no one is talking about. And I even remember myself when I was going through puberty and I first noticed discharge. I thought I had an infection. I thought something was really wrong. And my mom and I never talked about puberty. I didn't really feel like I could go to her with questions about my body. And so I was like, okay, I have an infection and I guess I'm just living like this forever. I had
Oh
no idea.
gosh. Did it
And it
give you
wasn't,
anxiety?
yeah, it did. And I
Yeah.
insecure about it.
Mhm.
It wasn't until a peer of mine, we were all at a sleepover, and really quietly in the dark, she's like, "Has anyone else ever noticed this?" And
Aw,
oh,
she's so brave to
I
say that to
know.
her
So,
girlfriend.
so brave. And I like all the weight lifted off my shoulders
Yeah,
in that moment,
that
right? Like,
just made me
no.
feel like yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's such a big piece of it for girls is they really feel like they're the only one with
Yes.
all of these changes, and especially those invisible changes, right? Largely vaginal discharge is an invisible change that happens during puberty.
Yeah.
No one's talking about it, right? And so
Mhm.
I just think it's so important for parents to acknowledge that. And a lot of parents are seeing that, right? Like they see it in the laundry when they're washing clothes, but actually speaking to it and letting girls know this is normal, this is healthy, this is okay. And another reason for that is what we know is that when a girl develops vaginal discharge, on average, it's about 6 months to a year until her first period. So
Mm,
once a parent sees that, that can be the catalyst for a really good conversation about getting her first period, which we see in stage 4. So that can just really open the door, right? We can create that trust about these changes that are happening and then start to educate her about her first period, which is, of course, a huge change that happens during puberty.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then is the 5th stage just like life as a woman?
Pretty
Am
much.
I in
Yep.
stage 5 still?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that what a lot of girls and moms don't realize is that stage 5 can actually go into the middle of the teenage years, even for some girls up until 20 years old. So
Mm,
it's like puberty is actually quite long, right? Depending on when a girl starts and how things progress. But I think it's so important that we talk about stage 5 too, because what we see in stage 5 for some girls and women, they'll develop pubic hair that reaches their inner thighs and often, and even hair outside of their nipple, like around the areola. And a lot of the time, that doesn't happen until stage 5 when girls are teenagers or almost 20 years old. And so, what I see is that often girls will think there must be something wrong with my hormones. As a teenager or getting close to 20 years old, I didn't realize that it was normal, right, for pubic hair to spread in that way or to have hair outside of the nipple. So I think even just conversations about that, about the changes they may notice, 5 years after starting puberty, really important conversations as well.
absolutely. So let's talk about how girls feel, like the emotions associated with these different stages and things that you've observed coming up for young women. I know my daughter, there's been a little bit of shame for herself, like she feels shame. I've noticed her posture shifting as her breasts continue to grow. Like she's hunching more and hiding, like trying to hide. Um, and we're very open in our home. Like we've talked, she asked me, what is this stuff coming out of my vagina? Like we're very open. There's no shame. Like she feels very comfortable with me and in her home talking about these things. But I know in the world it's different, right? Your body's changing she's been very vocal about like the awkward stages, right? Between budding and the develop, like, because your body in your mind looks weird, right? Like you don't quite look like the ladies in the magazine and you don't look like a little
Yes.
girl anymore. I'm wondering if this is pretty common, like these conversations or like what comes up and how can caregivers support these young ladies and not feeling weird and knowing that this is normal and like part of the process.
Yep. Yep. And I see this all the time, right? And a whole range of emotions come up when it comes to puberty. And it you're right. Like it's a strange transition, right? Again, you're not, a fully developed woman, but you're not a little girl. So where does that place you? And what is your role? And you mentioned social media at the beginning. And I think that's a big part of this, right? Is that, these 11, 12-year-old girls compare themselves to 20-year-old Instagram models that they see. And they think that, oh, well, I'm not beautiful or I'm not this or that, right? And that can be really challenging, that comparison. And I think that The mom and daughter program that I currently run, I have a few versions of it, but I run one that is a group program. And so it's girls and their moms together. I have found that to be for the girls. So for the moms healing, but for the girls, just so normalizing of their experience.
Mhm.
Because every girl feels a little bit of shame going through this phase of life. And even I asked the girls, how do you feel about getting your first period? And every girl says nervous and icky. Those are their feelings, icky
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
nervous. And I think that when they can all sit together and acknowledge that and just have a space to share that, it really helps with the shame because they're all feeling the exact same way, but they all feel like it is such an individual experience. And even sometimes hearing, like I had one girl share once that she was the shortest in the class and she felt so insecure and she would always look up to the taller girls and think that they're so cool. And then another girl, she was like, wow, I've always been the tallest in my class and I've always wished that I was shorter. I always wished that I was like the short girls in the class. And it was just such a humanizing moment for those two girls. They were both like, oh, huh. Right. And it's like they're having the same experience, just on opposite ends of, the height spectrum, but it's all part of it and it's all normal. And I think, starting these conversations with girls, even the fact that your daughter can say, I'm feeling a little shame about this, that is healing in and of itself for her to be able to share that, right? I think about my experience and I felt so much shame, but I felt like I couldn't voice that. Right. And so just being able to have the girls articulate how they're feeling and for that to be met with, yeah, puberty can be a really tough time. I can understand why you feel like that, right? Like the validation piece,
Mhm.
that's so important, right? It's like, I see you, I hear you. You're not alone in how you're feeling. And I think because it's part of it, right? All of the big feelings going through puberty, it's all part of it. But when we can voice that with people who love these girls, it's so powerful and it can really help them feel less alone.
Absolutely. Okay, so I am curious about this. Does this come up in your program or maybe in private conversations? What about the piece about like sexuality and arousal and more urges to touch themselves and explore their body and things feeling good and feeling warm down there when certain things, when they're stimulated by certain things they see, or you know what I mean? Because that my daughter's going to kill me for saying this, but that is a conversation that we've had that I've like normalized. Like this is a part of developing and growing up. And, it's totally human and normal,
Yeah,
but she
absolutely.
definitely has felt like shame and weird about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is such a part of it. It's not something that I have gotten into in my programs, but it is somewhere that I want to get into next. I think you're right. It is a really important conversation.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm figuring out how to support families through that and start
Yeah.
those
I
conversations.
understand people have different comfort levels with
Mhm.
different things. It's interesting. Like I personally I grew up in a home where we never spoke about anything and I was left to figure things out on my own. I felt very unsupported and I learned a lot of things from my friends and I look
Mhm.
back and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of choices I made in my life because I didn't get to have those types of conversations with a parent. And so I adopted the philosophy very early that like nothing's off the table. She can ask any question she wants. She'll never get criticized or shamed for it. And obviously, not everybody starts out that way as a parent, right? Like I
Mhm.
just happen to. But what that has allowed is, I mean, she will ask me stuff that I think, man, I would never, ever have had the guts to ask my mom because what if my mom would have rejected me or shamed me or just, not wanted to talk about it. And so I feel really thankful because we can have a lot of open conversations about these things. And I get to be the first person to speak into these things
Mhm.
as well, which I think is really important for parents to understand that if you're not opening the door, then they're trying to figure it out from somewhere else. And the other place where they might hear about it might not be things that you want them to be influenced by. Like she comes home and asks me, what does this mean? What does that mean? Because she hears a lot from her friends. And a lot of times they they think it's something that it's not. And I'm like, no, it's actually this. And she's always so glad she asked, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm so glad she asked. Like,
Totally. Yep. Yep.
yeah.
No,
And I
it's
this
so
is so
important.
important too for
Yeah.
parents to understand.
Yeah, it is so important. And I always say to parents, let it be awkward. Like,
Mhm.
that's fine. Like, let it be awkward. And especially in this day and age, she comes to you or she goes to the internet or TikTok
Yeah.
or ChatGPT or her peers, right? Let it be you. Let it be weird. Let it be awkward. Figure it out together, right? Like, we want to be the person that she comes to because you are the best source. And there's going and I always say that, the questions about, let's say, sex, for example, that trust starts when she's 8 by talking about, hey, I understand that you're having big feelings. It's okay to feel like that. Let's talk about it. And oh, I see you're developing breast buds. That's totally normal. Let's go pick out a bra together. Oh, you're getting your period soon. Let's talk about that. That builds the foundation for her to ask you about all of the things that you ultimately really do want her to come to you about when she's in her teenage years. That foundation actually starts early in puberty.
Absolutely. And I think too, I mean, obviously your program's amazing and people should be in your program, but sometimes it's as simple as getting a book. Like
Yep.
and working
Yep.
through a book together. I mean, we got her a book very early on because she wasn't going to be in my home all the time. She was going to be with her dad. And so I wanted her to understand her body and safe touch. And, so we've had books from very early on about the body and how babies are made and all of these things. And so before I found you, I did what I know to do and I got a puberty book
Yeah.
and we started working through
Love
it
it.
together. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And it's crazy because I actually have a lot like I lack a lot of memories around going through puberty and I think it's because of
Yep.
trauma.
Yep.
And so I felt very ill-equipped.
Mm-hmm.
And I was concerned because I'm like, I don't even remember going to the dressing room and picking out my first bra with my mom. I don't like, I'm assuming she took me, but I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't
Yep.
remember what that feels like or if I felt weird or embarrassed or any of those things. And so I'm like, okay, I need a tool to help me support her in this area, you know?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. And I love that you went through it with her. Like what I say to parents is don't just hand her the book and leave it in her room one day, never talk about it again, right? Like let it be the thing that starts the conversation, but make sure that you continue it because she will have questions about what she's reading in the book, right? So going through it together, being like, okay, let's maybe, and what I always say too is that it really depends on the child.
Yeah,
There's
totally.
many girls, right, they want to know all the things. They're curious about their bodies. They want to know how all the things function and work. And then there's other girls who are like, don't even talk to me about, like, I don't want to hear
Yeah. Do
anything,
not bring that
right?
word up to me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're so cringe.
Absolutely. Like there's a whole spectrum, right? And we have to, and that's where every child is different, right? Like you might have two daughters and they're just total opposite ends of the spectrum. And so, I think with the girls who are really open, it's easier to obviously start those conversations. But with the girls who want nothing to do with it, it's still important that we reach them, right? So that's where, putting a book in her room, maybe like with a note on it that says, like, read
Yes.
through this and then we can talk about it. Come to me with questions. Something else that I really like for the girls who aren't too open about these things is having a shared journal between you and your daughter. And so she can write any questions that she has about her body, and then you can write back. And that can be the way that you communicate this information so that there's a channel, but it's not a
Yeah.
verbal channel that maybe she's uncomfortable with.
Yes. I find in the beginning of this like I lay down with my daughter at night and we like we chit chat and sing and pray and stuff like that. And I found in the beginning of this process that she would ask the questions then and it would be darker in the room and like a lot of times we wouldn't be making eye contact, like I'd be snuggling with her, so it was like it felt safer to ask without having to look me in the face, right, see if
Yeah.
I react or anything like that. And it felt even like it was helpful for me in the beginning because then she could, not that I reacted, but I didn't feel this pressure of like having a certain face on for it, or you know what I mean? And then over time that built more trust, and now she'll just come into my room and say, "Hey, this is going on. What's the deal or whatever with my body or whatever." So that was really helpful, and I think just knowing, working with families for as long as I did and being a teen myself, just knowing the door is open is a really big deal. If you feel like the door is closed, that's when you feel alone. But if you know that your parent is there or your caregiver is there, even if you don't want to talk about something, but you know that you could if you needed to, and that they're not going to be weird with you. Weird meaning like shame you, or that's like a huge thing in a young person's life, to not feel alone, to know like it's there if I need it. Like my parents there if I need them.
Absolutely. It's so true. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Is
Mhm.
showing her that you can show up, right? And often that
Yeah.
means going first, right? Starting the awkward conversation to let her know that nothing's off the table and that you
Yeah.
can always ask any questions. And I love the like cuddling at night. It's so true. Another recommendation that I often give is have these conversations in the car where you don't have,
Yeah.
it really does help. It's
It does.
powerful. Yeah.
It does a lot, actually. I didn't even think of that because we do have a lot of deep conversations in the car because I'm looking
Yeah.
ahead, right? And I'm not looking at her. It's like less pressure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
even to just when you were mentioning that about like your facial reactions and all of that, I think that, parents processing their own feelings about their experience going through puberty is
Mhm.
such a big piece of it, right? I think, and like you shared a little bit, a lot of us did not have great experiences
Yeah.
going through puberty and navigating that time of our life, right? And so I always encourage parents to reflect on all of this, right? Like what myths or stigma do you hold or have about this phase of life? Like let's talk about that. Let's process that. Let's work through that so that we can create a really intentional experience for this next generation. Because there are a lot of myths out there, right? And even
Mhm.
when it comes to mental health, like the stigma piece is
Yeah.
huge, right? How many of us grew up actually talking about mental health? So few, right? Like it was
100%.
so taboo,
Yes.
so taboo, right? And so there is a lot of learning that is part of this process, right? Learning even as adults, okay, how do I even talk about feelings? How do I even notice the feelings that I'm having to educate my daughter on this, right? There is a lot of processing and
Yeah.
unlearning and relearning and all of it that is so much a part of this. And even another piece too that I talk to parents about is there might be some grief there for you, right?
I
That
was
your
just gonna
daughter's
say
growing up.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
So
piece
much
of it
grief
too,
right now.
right?
Mhm.
And acknowledging that and not making ourselves bad or wrong for that. You're allowed to feel that. That's
Mhm.
like you birthed this beautiful little girl, right? And she's growing up and
Mhm.
parts of that can be challenging and that's all okay.
Yeah, there can be such a grief process. Like I'm going through it currently.
Mhm.
Where yes, just she's changing so much, and not in a bad way, but in a different way than, right? And I think, you did a post, I think in the last week, about this commenting, I think, on this change where it's like they go from this your precious little sweet little girl, I'm botching what you said, but to this maybe somebody with an attitude or whatever. And I mean, she is such a touchy feely person, and she doesn't want to be touched as much,
Mhm.
and, my little girl is not a little girl anymore. And I'm working really hard not to make any kind of commentary about that. Right. And we have made a couple of little like jokes where we're like, she's a tween. And
Yep.
I spoke with my husband. I'm like, we need to be really mindful because we don't want to make that like she's bad, or shaming her for not being this little girl anymore, or, like because it's uncomfortable for us to go through this
Yeah.
process, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard sometimes because
Absolutely.
you do, as a parent, feel like, oh my gosh, where did my sweet little person go?
Mhm.
And also, though, like, that's not their purpose, right? is to be our sweet little kids, but it is a hard transition, I feel, at least for parents. For me, it's been a hard transition that I've been trying to figure out how to work through without, saying comments about it, or that it's not for her to carry that I'm struggling with her transition, because she's carrying her own struggles around transition.
Uh, Yeah,
And I think that that's
absolutely.
just really important for parents to understand. And so I have other outlets that I have mom friends who I'm talking to, and my spouse and I lean on each other, and I'm educating myself, and I'm letting myself grieve in private and things like that. Um, because it's a rite of passage for me too, as the mom, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you are not alone in feeling like that. That is such a common experience. And I think even us talking about this and naming this is going to be very helpful for the parents listening who are maybe noticing that they're having feelings, but they aren't sure exactly what it is, right? I think that that is really powerful. And even in this new phase, often what I tell parents too is to find new ways to connect, right?
Yeah.
Like talking with her and okay, maybe she doesn't want to, play dolls together anymore. Maybe she wants to do a Starbucks date for the two of you, right? Like there's new ways to connect and new ways to grow that relationship. And as she is changing and as she is seeking more independence and figuring out who she is, right? And that's what's actually so beautiful and that I love about this age group is that they're really figuring out who they are, right? And that's
Yes.
it's so special. They develop their values at this age, their confidence grows at this age. Like there's so much changing during this phase of life. It's how beautiful that we get to bear witness to that and we get to lead her through this time of her life where she's really becoming her own person.
Yeah,
It's
it
so
is.
hard and so
It
magical.
It is really magical. It's interesting because it's almost like, and I could be wrong, maybe you have some stats or you can explain this, but it's like we went from being very forward facing all the time, like facing each other in our relationship, to we're in this period of like we still connect and talk, but she wants a lot more side by side, almost like as a buffer to
Mm.
do the connecting. Does that make sense? Like you said, a Starbucks date, or we'll go thrifting, or she even wants to watch shows together, which of course in my mind I'm like, we're not connecting, but for her that's connection right now. And trying to force my ideas of what true connection is like I'm really loosening the reins and being more open to, yeah, sure, let's go thrifting, because inevitably in the car and while we're there, we're going to talk about, you know what I mean? And it's like letting her connect in the ways that are making her feel comfortable, because she feels weird right now in her life. Like she just feels awkward and there's so much going on, and it's sometimes it's too intense to connect like face to face all the time right now, like we used to when she was like 5, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And even what we know about this age too is as the brain is changing and hormones are getting involved, this is really when social comparison and social awareness really starts and is sort of at that all-time high at this age. And so they are just so aware of everything.
Yeah.
And they're so in their head. It's such a delicate time, right? Where they think nobody likes them and everything's going wrong and they're making all the wrong decisions and everything, right? Like it's such a new feeling for them. And for so many girls, it is so overwhelming. And so connection really, really does look different. And I
Mhm.
love that you're embracing that. And I think that sometimes what happens is they struggle to embrace that new reality of how she wants to connect in a different way. And I think that can be part of the grief too, which is totally
Yes.
allowed, right? That's so valid. But I love that you're letting her take the lead in some ways, right? And
Mhm.
being so adaptable to how she wants to connect and move through this. And that's such a great way to stay close while she still explores her independence in the ways that she's growing and changing.
Well, number one, I want her to be able to look back and feel as positive as she can about this time in her life, right? I mean,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
supported, but also I think parents get short-sighted about the long-term impact or outcome of how you engage with them through these different phases of their life. And if you don't create safety, and if you don't, and this isn't about perfection because I've messed up like
Totally.
many times in all the
Yep.
stages, right? And had to repair. But if you don't create safety and give them some space to have autonomy and all these things, then you aren't going to have that friendship that can exist, especially between moms and daughters later on. And so I always hold some priorities for right now, for what she needs right now, but I'm nurturing a relationship that I want to be very healthy and connected for the rest of her life. And so
Yes.
I try to think about that because I struggle with my relationship with my mom. And part of it is because of, she did the best she could, right? But part of it is because of the lack of connection and my ability to come to her with it. Like, I just don't feel comfortable, like, and safe, right? And so you're creating like a runway for the future too. And there's a lot of relationships between mothers and daughters specifically that are so beautiful and magical. And I want her to know that I'll be here for her every single stage of her life.
Mhm.
And you set that tone, like you said, very early on. And I don't, it's not about being perfect. It's just about trying to be connected and accepting and open, you know? Hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, and, like, let it be messy, right? Like, make all the mistakes. That's how you know you're trying, right?
Yes.
Make the mistakes and then repair. And that teaches her too something that I love talking to girls about is perfectionism, because I
Oh
find
my
that
gosh,
at this
yes.
age, it's such a big it holds them back a lot, and they're so in their head about needing to be perfect and all of that. And what a great example we can give by messing up, right?
Yeah.
Like getting it wrong and then coming back and being like, I'm really sorry I lost my temper there. That wasn't cool. I'm sorry. I wish I responded like this. Can we try again? Right? Like showing her that repair is so helpful for her own emotional regulation and the way that she repairs relationships, because she will get it wrong too. We're
Yeah.
all just human. It's never and ever about perfection.
Yes, totally. Can we talk a little bit about this influence of the digital age on puberty, but also how girls are experiencing puberty in themselves and their self concept, how this is affecting their self concept?
Yes. It's so challenging, and it's so that mental health business that I own, that we work in schools, this is a big conversation that we have in schools with kids, is social media, mental health, the intersection of all of that. And it's, in so many ways it's so new that it is challenging to navigate, right? And
Yeah.
a big conversation that we have in schools when we do parent workshops is, when is the right time, right, to give kids access? And it's hard to know. It's really hard to know. And something that I always tell parents is that once we give kids access to social media, we can't really control what they see. There's so much adult content on these apps, right? And
Yeah.
we can try to filter things and block hashtags and pair our accounts, and we can do all the things, but at the end of the day, these are adult apps. And I think that that's important for parents to really understand and to think through with their kids. Something that I talk to parents about when they're considering giving their child access to social media is, I like to encourage them to treat social media the same way that we treat getting a driver's license. So
Mhm.
have to prove that you can be safe, that you understand the rules, and that you know to a certain degree what to do if something goes wrong, right? The same way that you have to know all those things before you get access to being out on the road.
Yeah.
And the same go with social media, right? Have your child sit down and tell you about Snapchat and some of the dangers so that you understand, that they understand the risks, because There are a lot, right? And they understand what is inappropriate content and what to do if something feels unsafe or if they have questions. They know that they can come to you, they know what happens next. So I think having those conversations are really, really important. And I think the confidence piece is really tough when it comes to social media.
Mhm.
Something that we talk a lot about in schools is AI, right? And not just ChatGPT, but there's AI models
Yes,
on.
it's wild.
It's wild. It's wild. We show a clip to kids and it's these two girls like dancing to like a viral sound and they're like giggling and and I'm like, "Well, the reason I showed you that is because neither of those girls are real people.
Yeah.
AI." And all the kids, "What? No way." But, like they're these perfect looking, very mature looking teenagers and they're entirely fake, right? But what is that doing to confidence, right? Kids'
Yeah.
confidence. It's so tough to navigate. And I think, time limits are really, really important. There's a lot of research out there showing that okay, I don't know the exact statistics off the top of my head, but I think it's like teenagers that spend more than 6 hours a day on social media, and the average that teenagers are spending is 9 hours a day. So 6 hours or more, yeah, increases their risk of being diagnosed with anxiety or depression by something like 80%.
Wow.
It's huge, right?
It
It's
makes
it's
sense
huge.
because,
It
I
does.
have a digital business and so do you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
navigating that the last 6 years, just in general, as a woman or as a person, I've had my own challenges where I've had to really be like, Andrea, you need boundaries. Like that,
Mhm.
these things are influencing you and your
Yeah,
thoughts and your feelings and your this, right? I mean, and I'm an adult who can do that.
I know.
Right? This is incredible. This is, and the other thing is that children are being primed earlier because if they have access to Roblox or YouTube Kids, YouTube, their friends have access to stuff and they come to school and talk about it. I mean, this is even before you have like a tween or a teen who's asking for social media. Like she's always had an iPad because for a long time her dad didn't live in state. And we, slowly over time it became she was allowed to watch YouTube Kids and all that stuff has things embedded in it, right? Like visuals and stories and clips and that are still, making them feel like they should look like this or act like this or, be like this and so it's starting even earlier, even before social media, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
these are things to think about. I mean, there's stuff in Roblox that there's different like rooms or games or whatever you can go into that are very mature and
Yes.
you're being exposed to stuff very early on. And so, I mean, it's everywhere. It's prevalent everywhere, you know? Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's shaping their self-concept very early on. But I do think that it's when you have things like puberty going on and social media, it's like gasoline
Mhm.
to a fire, right?
It really is. It really is. It's so complicated and you're right. I've talked to like grade 1 teachers and they're like on social media, right? Like the
Oh my
kids like
gosh, in first
yeah.
grade? This is
Yeah. It's like one kid, like their older brother, they have access to his account, right? And it's like, and then they show their peers, like it's so embedded
yeah,
in our life and it's part of our reality now. And
yeah,
I think it even goes back to, and this isn't, a full solution, but having a good connected relationship with your kids,
yeah,
right? And something that we see in the research is that kids are really, especially at this age, they just want to belong. They just want to feel like they matter.
yeah,
And so, the more that we can create a culture of belongingness at home, it is protective against, social media addiction. Because if they don't feel like there's anywhere that they really belong, it's very easy to seek to find that online in chat rooms, there's
yeah.
unfortunately, it's easy to find that if you go looking for that on the internet, but it's
Well,
not helpful.
It's
often.
not, and this is a thing. That's something I did as like a young person who felt very disconnected and like I didn't belong in my home just because there was never any connection. But I did it in like there wasn't social media at the time, right? Oh my gosh, it would be wild if there was when I was growing up. Like I did it
Agreed.
by seeking out certain people in social groups and, doing certain unhealthy, high risk activities
Yep.
and running with certain groups of people. It's the same thing, but it's just some of the dangers with social media are you don't always know who you're talking to, and how it shapes your brain and your psyche and your sense of self is it's like exponentially more intense because of the way our brains work with screens and visuals and right. And so that's where the concern is, and it's interesting. Our situation is interesting because we now do 50-50. Like her dad's moved here over the last couple years and their house is more disconnected. Like there's a lot of stuff going on. She has a little sister. He works from home. He's caregiving for his mom. And so they really live more in a like how we grew up where it was like everybody was home, but they were all doing their own things. Right. I don't know if
Mm.
you grew up that way, but that they talk
Yep.
about that concept a lot.
That's
That's really what his house looks like. And he's doing the best he can. It is what it is. But that's what his house looks like. And she is on her iPad way more. Whereas here, we let her have iPad time because she gets on with her best friend and they're, talking and whatever. But we've got this running joke. Okay, we're doing forced connection time, forced family time. And she'll be like, but then when we do it, she's like, no, I mean, like, I'm glad we did this. Like we
yeah.
played Clue
Yep.
and, like dinner time is all devices are gone and like we are having dinner. Even if we're sitting together quietly, we're having dinner together as a family. Right. So there's moments where we are creating and cultivating connection so that she doesn't want to just hide all the time to get connection somewhere else. Like we're providing the connection. And sometimes she wants to talk about things I really don't care about, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to listen.
Yeah.
I want her to connect. I want her to feel
Yeah.
connected to us and to people face to face versus only her friends in some hidden chat or something, right?
Yep.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
And so part of it is like letting go of what that like always looks like. And that's something that I had to learn as a parent is it's not going to always look like and feel like the way I want it to look and feel.
Mhm.
And like I just have to be okay with that
Absolutely.
because I'd rather her
Yeah.
connect, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
talk and
No,
share and just us be in each other's presence.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. And
Yeah.
I love what you were saying about like the games and stuff. And even like I always encourage parents to like come up with some like predictable rituals or things that you do as a family. Like
Yes.
embed them as much like obviously, not every week is perfect, but embed them into the schedule, right? It's like, okay, every Saturday morning we all go for a walk together
Yeah.
and then come home and play a board game, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is, but their brains love that predictability and
Yes.
that security almost like, okay, that's the moment to connect, right? And sure, in that moment, they might be like, oh, but I just want to play on my iPad. But once they get into it, it is so deeply healing and nurturing for them at this age. And even continuing that, right? Like into the teenage years as much as you can, right? They roll their eyes, but they do really
No,
love
they
it.
secretly love it. No,
Do
they
they really do?
do. They secretly love it. Like I would have
Yeah.
given anything as a teenager and I was like a hellion, okay? Like I was very rebellious. I felt it was like my way of trying to get my needs met. All I really wanted was for my mom to like see me
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
force me to be like connected or even just like connecting to me. Like that's all I really wanted was to be seen and witnessed. And so it was just so hard because I felt so alone all the time, even though I was like in the home, right? And so knowing that I don't take her eye rolls or her like, I don't want to personally. I'm just like, well, I say to her, I was like, I know you don't. That's okay. I'm like, but this is part of the deal. Being part of this family is we spend some intentional time together every day. So once we do it, then you can go back to whatever, right? So I acknowledge her like
Yep.
pretending or her initial, and then she's like,
Mhm.
okay, fine. And then we get
Yep.
into it and it's great, right?
Yeah.
We were playing board
Absolutely.
games the other night and she didn't want to play the second one. And I just said to her, I was like, listen, we're having connection time. We're having family time. We can change the game if you want. I'm like, but sometimes connection also means that we're all doing something that everybody likes, not just one person. I'm like,
Mhm.
so we can change the game or what do you want to do? And she's like, I'll just play the game. At the end of the game, she says to me, okay, guys, I'm really glad that you made me play this second game. I actually had a really good
Love
time
it.
with you, right? Like,
Oh, so sweet.
so it's
Oh,
not like I really try not to shame her into like this, you never want to spend time with us and blah.
yeah,
It's just more like here,
yeah,
this is what we do as a family
yep,
and we're going to do it. And
yep,
then when we're done, you can go do whatever you want.
yep,
And that takes
yep.
the pressure off of her feeling like she has to have a certain attitude while we're doing it or right, because that's the other thing is that if you're in the space with your family and they're like nitpicking and want you to perform,
Mhm.
that doesn't
Mhm.
feel like you're not going to feel safe to connect and just be.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think that that's an important piece too is like parents they want their kids or their young women to like emote a certain way or
Mhm.
express delight or and it's just kind of like just let them be and if you
Yeah.
just let them be they'll actually connect more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's actually such an important point and something that I actually think is such a critical conversation to have during puberty and to remind parents that no one can control their emotions, right? Emotions are automatic.
Yeah.
And so when we criticize, like there are wrong actions, absolutely,
Yeah, totally.
but there are no wrong emotions, right? So if we are constantly criticizing her anger or her irritability or the emotion, that is just going to create disconnect because
Yeah.
she's like, well, I don't know how to change this.
Yeah.
But we can change the action, right? Like if she plays again, well, that's going to have an effect on her mood and her thoughts and all
Yes.
of the
Yes.
pieces. But telling her to stop or change that feeling
Yeah.
is just counterproductive. It's just going to create conflict.
Yeah, disconnection. It makes her feel like makes them feel shame. She was
Yeah.
for the second game. She was like kind of sat back and was,
Mhm.
and I nobody responded to that. It was just kind of like, okay, let's play. Your turn, our turn.
Yeah.
And after a bit, she like leaned back in and was like
Mhm.
into it again, right? But we didn't like highlight the fact that she was having a bad attitude or not excited or it just was what it was. And that
Absolutely.
allowed her to kind of move through it and figure out a different way, right? Or how she felt or whatever. And I just think that that's really important. I remember my emotions being labeled a lot,
Mhm.
like picked, like pointed out or like nitpicked or I was eating worms or and it just made me feel so shitty. I'm just like, this
Yep.
is just how I
Yeah.
feel. What do you want me to do? Like, I'm
I
a teen, right? So
know.
I don't know. Like, this is just how I
Yeah.
feel right now. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? It was like,
Yeah, it shuts down the whole conversation, right? When and then you feel like, "Oh, I'm too much," or "I'm
yes,
this," or "I'm that." I think a big part of this too is emotional regulation for the adults involved
yeah,
is can be a challenge, right? Like it's like you said, it's not personal. It is not personal. The eye roll, it's nothing to do with you. I did a post about this a while ago. It was like it's not personal, it's puberty, right? Like
yes,
it's the way her hormones are shifting. It's the way her brain is changing. It's really not you. It's just biology and hormonal and all of the things. And it's one thing to say that, and it's a totally other thing to be in that moment and be like, as the parent, be like, like lose it,
yes,
right? Like
yes,
that's hard. And that requires a lot of emotional regulation as an adult, right? And so I think even with parents, like seeking support if you need that, right? Leaning on
mhm,
your mom friends or your family or a professional for support. Like, I think a lot of us that didn't grow up in families where emotions were okay or healthy or allowed, it is hard to be emotionally regulated as an adult. Like, that's not something that's taught, right? Like, that's not inherent. And so I think that can be a really big challenge for a lot of parents. And I just want people to know, like, if you are losing your cool and you're taking it personally, like, that's normal. That is normal. And there is a lot of support and resources available to really help you through that. because that's hard too.
Yeah. What kind of support and resources would you encourage a parent, but especially like a mom who's walking their daughter through this process outside of friends? And like, are there books? Do you think like therapy? Like what would you encourage them to do? Obviously your program, but what other types of resources are there?
Yeah, I've seen therapy be really helpful for
Mhm.
families. And whether that's, family therapy or just for a parent to work through things, I have seen that be really, really beneficial for families. And I think that your daughter going through a lot of these things, especially if you weren't supported, it can bring up a lot. Like it can trigger a lot from your own childhood, right? And a lot that I feel like, often people think, well, I'm not in that anymore. I'm past that. I'm an adult, I'm okay. And then she goes through it and it's trigger, 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 trigger. And
Oh yeah.
it brings up a lot. And that's a really common experience, right? And I think that that's where, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be like formal therapy, even just recognizing that, reflecting on that. If, breathing or meditation or walks or whatever, like exercise, like any coping strategies that are beneficial for you, really implementing them at this time. And I think community is so huge here, right?
Yeah.
Like having other mom friends that you can be like, okay, I am losing my shit. Like, can we talk through this?
Yeah.
Have you been here? Right? Like, again, I think a lot of parents going through this can feel a lot of shame and a lot of isolation and think that they're the only one. But that's not the case. Like, it's everybody, it's everyone is going through this, right? And so having conversations with other people that are in the thick of it, feeling the same thing can be so helpful and so validating.
Yeah, I agree. I have a really good girlfriend who has had a similar upbringing to mine, like a very, not connected mother. And we have like parallels in some of the things that we're going through as moms, right? Of girls,
Yeah.
realizing how, I mean, as she gets older, I realize more and more how not supported I was. And that has been its own, like, besides grieving the fact that she's growing up and changing, like realizing how much I haven't actually acknowledged or processed about my own experience at her age. And so I'm simultaneously working through that. And it can be a
Yeah,
lot. So having
totally.
resources, and I'm pretty well resourced, right? Just in general, but having other resources where I can go to my girlfriend and say like, man, this I had these thoughts and feelings today and it was rough and I remember this thing from when I was like a 12 and I hadn't thought about that forever until this thing happened with my daughter, and like just having her be like, yeah, that's really sucks and I feel you, like just witnessing can be very powerful.
Totally. So
Mhm.
powerful. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And that's where we like same as girls, right? It's those shame spirals where we feel like the only one. We feel like we're doing it all wrong. And she's feeling all that too, right? Like it's so interesting. Like all the parallels, right? Like as we help her navigate this. And something that I talk to girls about often too is, and not in every case, but sometimes your mom is also going through perimenopause at the same time and her own hormonal shifts and changes. And it's almost like if it lines up like that, it's almost, it's the start and sort of the end of the same cycle, that same
Yeah.
female cycle. And there's a lot of beauty and there's lots of ways to connect through that, right? It's like, it is like this deeper understanding of being on opposite ends of that spectrum, but in some ways having a similar experience through it all.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what's really interesting, and I didn't really we didn't really fully hit on this is when you spoke about like the comparison and the perfectionism. Why do you think that that comes up? Like it made me think about she made a comment about how she actually said it was crazy. She said to me, "Well, you look like a Kardashian," which I don't, but I am very curvaceous
Yeah.
and I really embrace and own my curves, right? And she witnesses me embracing that and celebrating my curves or whatever, and she's like, well, you look like a Kardashian and my best friend is like super skinny and I don't look like either of you. And I was kind of taken aback like by the fact that she even compared herself to me, right? And she's
Mhm.
like, "You have these beautiful curves, and I don't have these beautiful curves." And I'm like, "Well, Samantha, you will have some form of curve." I said, "I don't know exactly what your body's going to look like, but like you're developing into that right now. I'm 42 years old. Like this is what, and I've had a baby,
Mhm.
right?" I said, "So it's been a process, and you're just starting that process." And I thought that that was fascinating
Mhm.
that she even compared her body to my body.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, that it so happens at that age, right? Like that social awareness and that comparison. And yeah, I mean, I hear stuff like that all the time, right? And I think that too, a lot of parents, when conversations like that come up, they really panic almost
Yes.
or like freeze, and they're like, no, but I want her to know that she's beautiful and that she doesn't need to compare. And it's a tricky spot, right? Because she's having these feelings, and we don't want to tell her that, like, well, don't feel like that. Like you're fine the way you are, because she's like, well, I've noticed that maybe I'm not and maybe I am
Right.
different. And so
Mhm.
it's a challenging place to navigate, right?
It is.
And it really is. And, I think just acknowledging, like, yeah, it's so hard. And something that I always say to girls is I like to talk about the messy middle. And I talk about it with lots of things. Like I told, this was a few years ago, I told this story to the girls where we were painting our place and we did the first coat, and I sat down and I was like, I hate it. I
Yeah.
hate it. I hate the color. It's not right. It doesn't fit. And my husband was like, okay, we just painted the whole apartment. Like, and he's like, okay, let's do the second coat, right? Like it looks a little patchy right now. Let's do it. And if you still hate it, we can figure it out, right? And so we did the second coat, and I was like, okay, never mind. It looks good. It came together, right? But
Mhm.
it's that messy middle, right? And everything in the middle feels messy and looks messy and doesn't really make sense. But it's only when we get to the other side that we can look back and say, okay, I was just in the middle of it.
Mhm.
And it's always messy, and that's okay, right? And I think for girls, just letting them know, like, it's okay to feel like that about your body sometimes.
Yes.
Right. And I say that all the time. Like, if we just say, like, no, 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 you're perfect, you're beautiful, you're everything, they're like,
Well, that's not
no.
what they think. So you're trying to tell them what to think about themselves. And it's like,
Yeah.
you can't,
Yeah.
if it were that easy to heal people and change their
Hmm.
minds by telling them, neither of us would
Yeah.
have a job, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
so, but I understand the urge. Like, I've
Yeah.
accidentally done it knowing that
Of
that's not
course. Of
effective.
course. Yeah.
And I've said, and so one thing I do say to her is I'll say, "You know what? Of course, like I understand why you feel like that." I'll say, "But how we feel isn't always the truth." I'm like, "You feel that way right now because you're feeling weird about your body, right? You also feel that way because you're comparing yourself to your friend, but your friend has completely different like two different
Yeah.
parents, different metabolism or different whatever, like you two are going to look different. And
Mhm.
you think that she's beautiful and that's okay. And so you think that's how you're supposed to look."
Mhm.
And I will ask her, like, how does comparing make you feel? And it always makes her feel bad, right? And I said, okay, so comparison, we all do it, but it's also important to be aware of how much it affects us and how we feel
Mhm.
about ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah,
try to
it's
change her mind because that, like, doesn't work, you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah. And then it makes her feel like you don't get it, right?
Totally.
And something that I said too, I had a conversation like this really recently with a tween, and she was saying, she's like, I don't feel pretty like all my friends. And it was a similar thing, comparing bodies and all the things.
Mhm.
And we just talked about it, and I said to her, like, I feel like that sometimes too. And then I looked around the room, and there was a bunch of moms and girls there, and I said to the moms, how many of you have felt like that? And all of them, yeah, I felt like that. I compare myself sometimes
Mhm.
too. And she was like, I didn't know that. I thought it was just me who thought that I wasn't pretty enough, good enough, whatever. And we're like, no, we've actually all felt that way. And she's like, wow, okay. Like knowing that, again, knowing she wasn't alone in
Yeah.
having that feeling was so healing for her in that moment.
Absolutely. I think too, like, I don't know if this comes up, but trying like going and trying on clothes and trying on the other day we went to go get her school uniforms and she wanted to try shorts and she this is like the first time she wanted to do shorts and like they're not for school uniforms, they're almost all the way down to your knees. Like they're not, I mean, they're uniforms, like they're not actually fit
Yeah.
for girls' bodies. Like
Yeah.
and she was so upset and the lighting wasn't good, you know, all of it, right? And
Mhm,
she was so
mhm,
upset and she's like, "What?" And I said, "This is normal." Like, I just told her, I'm like, "This is normal. Sometimes trying on clothes is an upsetting process when they're not made for our bodies properly,
mhm,
or the shapes of our bodies, the lighting isn't good." I'm like, "This is normal, and, like, I just want you to know that. Like, your frustration's normal, and there's nothing actually wrong with you, but it can feel like that when you're trying on clothes that aren't really tailored for your body and when the lighting is horrible and so it makes you look bigger than you are in the mirror." I'm like, I have this experience all the time. There's certain dressing rooms that I hate trying clothes on in because I feel like it makes my body look weird, you know?
mhm.
And that just like made her, I don't know, feel seen. Like she was still frustrated, but she was like, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
it's not just me, right? It's not
yeah,
just me. I'm not the only one. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's such and that is the antidote to shame, right? Is
Yes.
I've been there. I see you. Me too. Right? It's so powerful, and something that I say too to girls and their moms is shame only lives in the dark. Right? As soon as we put words to it, as soon as we say, "I've been there too. Me too. Raise your hand if you felt that way." All the hands go up. It's up. Okay. It's
Mhm.
not just me. Oh, I have discharge too. Right? It's
Yeah.
oh, okay, it's not just me. It's so powerful, and I think ultimately that is really what I'm trying to do with all of this puberty education is just eradicate that shame because every girl is going through the same thing and they just have no idea that they're all going through the exact same
Yeah.
thing and that their parents went through the exact same thing. So how can we normalize all of this, all of these conversations and just get rid of all of that, right? Replace that with confidence and we
Mhm.
free up the shame.
Mhm.
What replaces it is so powerful, right? It's confidence, it's curiosity, it's all of these things that we want for girls, but shame takes up a lot of space in these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this, and I don't think like we're out of the waters by any means. Her dad took her, so she's in Girl Scouts, which is something I did for her self-confidence, right? Her being
Yeah.
around like a really empowering female environment. And she went through this phase where, and she hasn't started menstruating, but she went through this phase where she really was like she loves to dance and like what you were talking about, right? They get up and they
Mhm.
and she used to just be so disinhibited. I have so many videos of her when she was little just dancing and being
Yeah.
goofy. And I there's been a gap. There's not a lot of that that's been going on for like the
Yeah.
last, year and a half, 2 years.
Yep.
And he sent me this picture of her with one of her Girl Scout sisters. They're like had glow sticks on their body and they were just like you could tell they were dancing. And
Cute.
it just really warmed my heart. I'm like, she's starting to settle into herself again. Like she's making a way. Like she's finding some self-confidence. She's letting herself kind of go at moments and like be free again, which makes me
Mhm.
hopeful. It's gonna be
Yeah.
messy. I know there's gonna be more, but that she's like finding her footing in this process.
Love it. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's so great to see.
Yeah. So this has been an incredible conversation. I think
Oh,
what
so
you're
much fun. I
doing
love
is so incredible, and everybody needs to go to your page. Like, I think even women who maybe don't have children yet or even had their own experience that they want to heal through, like, they need to be on your page because it's very
Oh,
healing
thank
for me too, just personally to see your content. Where can people find you?
Mm. So my Instagram is Dr. Rawana. So that's TARARAWANA. I'm very active on Instagram, so you can definitely find me there. And I have a bunch of resources, free resources for families as well. I have a period kit checklist if your daughter is getting close to her first period. I have an overview of those 5 stages of puberty. And then I have a free guide that's a bunch of questions to ask your daughter before her teen years. So you can find all of those on my page as
I
well.
love it. And we're going to also have your Instagram and your website linked in the show notes. So you guys can go like directly to the show notes anywhere you're listening or watching this. And your program, is it a rolling program, or is it do you launch it every so often? Like, how does that work if somebody wants to learn more about your program?
So my self-paced mom and daughter program, or parent and daughter program, is coming out next month. So depending on when this is released, it's coming out in August 2025. Stay tuned. And yeah, it'll be coming out in August. And yeah, all the details will be available very soon.
Yeah, so it'll be coming out probably around within a couple weeks, that same time that this is aired. So I'm really excited for people to
Awesome.
learn about that. So I'm assuming they can just go to the link that we're already going to provide.
Yes. Yep. I'll
Okay.
link the wait list on there.
Okay,
that they can-
amazing. Thank you so much for
Amazing.
being here. This has been such a just profound conversation, such a healing conversation. And I'm so excited for everybody to hear it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I really love doing this with you, Andrea.
Absolutely. All right, I'll see you guys in the next episode.